bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo, and it's also known as Ricky Brands, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest, Mikki Willis, the filmmaker of PLANdemic, the most censored documentary and probably one of the most viral documentaries in history. Last time he was on, we talked about the documentary, all the censorship that was going on to suppress his film and all the information in the film. And today we talk about what's going on currently in the world. We talk about his new projects, including a new PLANdemic documentary. We also talk about his book, PLANdemic, Fear is the Virus, Truth is the Cure. Last time Mikki was on, we had a incredible, almost 3-hour conversation. It was episode 271. I highly recommend you guys going back and checking it out if you didn't listen to it. It's almost like he's incapable of giving a bad interview because we had another phenomenal interview, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Last but not least, this is a value for value show. If you get some type of value out of these conversations or any of my podcasts, consider giving some value back. If you can financially support the show, there's ways to do that. And you can find all this stuff in the show description, or you can go to the rippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyvranz.com and go to support, and you'll find our Patreon page. If you want to support us on Patreon, we have a PayPal account. If you want to send a donation, we have a Rockfin channel, which is a uncensored video platform, and you can also tip content creators on there, and plenty of content creators that I know you're a fan of are on there, like Ryan from Last American Vagabond, Abby Martin, Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, Jason Burmis, Jimmy Dore. The list goes on and on and on. So definitely check out Rockfin and support platforms like them and Odyssey and BitChute and Float, all the platforms that aren't censoring content creators and giving us a place where we can explore alternative views and alternative perspectives on what's going on in the world. We also have a merch store if you want to support us by purchasing some hoodies or t-shirts or any of that stuff. You can find the merch store on the rippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyvranz.com. Just go to support and click on merch. Or if you want to go directly to the Ripple Effect Podcast store, just go to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. The Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com will bring you directly to the store. And remember, if you can't support the show financially, please share the show, subscribe to us on all the platforms we're on, review the show, and that goes a long way. I know everybody's in a different financial situation, so if things are good, financially support the show. If things aren't, no worries. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their holidays and spending time with their friends and family, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace. Something you discussed a little bit on a podcast recently, or a couple months ago when you did an interview, was moving to Texas, and I know got into some of the other agendas like the transhumanism and some of the other agendas that are being pushed on our children and all those things, which I think is super scary. And they all intertwine. It seems like they're all these things are for it seems like that this other agenda of either helping people lose spirituality or importance of family or something. It seems like they're just trying to destroy everything that we've created as a civilization and we've decided is important. Do you see that also?
Absolutely. It's a methodical and concentrated effort to chip away at the pillars of everything that's worth living and dying for. If you can see it through that lens, then you actually understand their next moves. It's the only thing that makes logical sense for the intent to erase the word mother and all of the other words, powerful words, all the other movements, anything to do with patriotism, love for our country, anything like that is now deemed, Nazi. And so when you can convince people that these important, literally the things that hold up the values of our lives, it's important to understand that America was an experiment, not a failed one, but a very successful experiment, because other nations in history had always experienced this tyrannical takeover of their governments. Kings and royalty would always somehow manipulate the people and totally overtake them. And so America was founded upon a constitutional agreement, which I view as a mission statement. If anyone's ever created any kind of a cause-driven mission or a business, it always begins with a mission statement. Why are we doing this? What is our intention? You put that in place, and you usually put a lot of work into it to really refine the language, to get really clear on what is this thing we're about to put all of our energy and years of sweat equity into, and let's create a creed, an agreement up front of what it's about, so we never lose sight of that. Because everyone understands that as things grow, companies, other influencers come in, other people with other ideologies. But if you have your founding document that says, this is what we're creating this business for, then you can always go back to that and identify where you're getting off course. And that's our constitutional founding principles that have made this experiment of United States so successful. And so everything under that props that up is being chipped away at. And it's all leads to the same thing, but they're chipping at it. If they just go just one area, then they you can destroy a pillar that holds up supports a foundation of a building, and it can still stand. But if you chip away at the rest of them, then eventually that whole system collapses. And so all of this is a concerted effort to hit us from all angles and to change our focus, to redirect us, distract us from what's natural and what's important, what's most important, our purpose for being alive and coming on this planet. And because if you imagine being a young person and saying, okay, mother no longer exists, girl or boy no longer exists, marriage doesn't exist, babies don't really matter, no one wants to have babies anymore. Everything, all striving for success or money is an evil man's game. What are you left with? Imagine a young mind being everything being so stripped away, their dreams, everything, because they're told they're oppressed, and that everything is stacked against them. Now, there are definitely forces that have stacked things against all of us, so we're in it together. But to isolate that to your fellow humanity and pit us against each other is really one of the most destructive agendas that's playing out before our eyes at this moment.
Well, one thing I love about your journey is we kind of have a similar journey in regards to our mindset. Obviously you loved being artistic and loved the arts growing up. I was very similar, always loved just anything that was artistic, music, poetry, painting, drawing, anything like that. And so I related to the left much more than the right growing up, and I think that happens a lot with people. It's like that saying, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. It's kind of, it kind of makes sense, because when you're young, all you care about is loving one another and being nice to everybody. And the left kind of paints that picture that that's what they're about. And the right, you see like, oh, capitalistic type of philosophies kind of dominate their thinking, and it's like, oh, that's all for corporations and greed and all that stuff. I don't relate with that. I'm an artist. I like to be passionate. I like to look internal and be nice to people. But as time went by, you realize it's an illusion, and we've all been tricked. And it boggles my mind how many artists are still tricked. I mean, hasn't this been a amazing time to kind of look at artists that we probably grew up loving or respected, and then to see how they've treated all this, and how, it's like that other quote, it's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. It's so hard to convince them that they've been tricked. Or what is it? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think the artists hold a very critical, important place in the rebuilding of our world and the way that it works for all of us. And they'll say that art imitates life, and it works the other way around too. Life imitates art, and so there's a creative responsibility that we have as artists that the vast majority of artists have abandoned decades ago. It's something to consider when you think someone comes out and gives a powerful speech, and you might listen to it once. You hear a podcast, people will most likely listen to this podcast or even a portion of it once. But we hear hit songs over and over and over for decades. And that repetitive programming becomes literally infused into our consciousness. And so musicians have, there's a lot of them that just want to escape responsibility of not putting so much importance on their work. And they're not pausing enough to see how much, they influence the next generations. These kids are emulating every hand gesture. They're talking like them. They're wearing their shirts. They're molding their minds to be more aligned with their favorite musicians. And so it's a great deal of responsibility. And I just hope artists recognize that sooner than later and start to, there's an incredible trend happening right now with all these truth-telling songs that are coming out, and they're shooting to the top of the charts, way past A+ list artists, and not all the songs are that good. The Let's Go Brandon songs, I haven't heard a good one yet, but it's the fact that it's just carrying a message that people want to hear and say in the moment. And so they support it. And so that's a real indication of people's hunger for information that is contrary to the chosen narrative of the moment. And so artists need to, I think it's a good trend, because artists typically, there's very few artists, and I would say that they're the legends, we call them legends at this point, that have carved their own path. The majority of them just follow. They go, okay, what did the Black Eyed Peas do this month? And okay, it's a little electronica with a little loop, with a little bit of, okay, cool, well, let's do that, because that's what's hitting right now. So they just emulate what other artists are doing. So many of them do that. It's just copycat performance. And then some of them are really original, where they're not striving for a hit song. They're striving to be true to themselves and to the art form itself. And when they hit, those songs become classics. And so it's like, for artists, if you really want to be a classic, if you want to be remembered in that way, if you want to do something important, which almost every artist is in it to some way influence society and to make a statement, really consider what statement it is that you're making. What are you saying in your message? And if you're just writing a song from a dark place, and you want to go and convince the next generation of how horrible the world is and the future is, well, just know that you're making a bed that you're going to have to lie in for the next 50 years. And so, when we start to understand that our work is, not only does it directly impact the society that we're all part of, that we have no choice but to be part of, and that society then directly affects our lives and our future and the health and wealth and livelihoods of everyone that we love, I would hope that people would start to consider more frequently the messages that they're putting out, and let life imitate art in its brightest light.
Well, I think one of the other problems too is that there are true believers. There are people out there who have been so into creating music and beautiful music that they haven't been aware of how the world works in regards to the politics and the elite. And they truly believe in their hearts of hearts that they are fighting for a just cause. And it's not, I mean, sometimes I almost feel bad for them, because I'm like, they're just naive. They haven't been in this world. They haven't done the research. I mean, your documentary PLANdemic, one thing I loved about it, and the Dr. Judy Mikovits one, the one that went viral, I think it went viral, and I think we talked about this the first time we chatted, was because what you showed made much more sense than what the TV was telling them. And a light went off in their head, and they're like, I'm looking for answers. The TV's telling me that there should be dead bodies in the street. I don't know anybody who's sick. I don't know anybody who's dying. So none of this is making sense. And then what Dr. Judy Mikovits said and what you were saying made much more sense. And then your documentary, the full length documentary with Dr. David Martin and all the historical scenes and events that you share really puts the pieces together for somebody who's a normie, for a lack of a better term, because it shows that this isn't the first time, and this has been going on for a long time. And since there's been humanity, there's been elites and people who want to control people and people who want to dominate people and people who think that they're a monarchy and they deserve to make the decisions for humanity. This isn't new, and yet this goes into, I guess, the other thing about spirituality that I've been talking a lot about, and I've heard you talk about, because I, again, was raised a Catholic, wasn't spiritual or religious at all, and honestly, I kind of thought it was kind of ridiculous, and I'm like, this is not necessary. And now I'm like, holy crap! Like, I respect it. I see the need for it, and I also seem to think that a lot of the people who are taking this fight much more seriously might be because they believe that good and evil actually exist.
I 100% agree. It's I've had a really an awakening through this process. As somebody who was born and raised without religion, and I'm grateful for that, because I will always hold the awareness of the destructive side of religion, the side that's been co-opted for power and gain, which everything that has power gets co-opted and twisted. And so the religion has been used to create war after war after war. And so, you know, that form of organized corrupt religion, I'll never be a part of that. But the necessity to believe in a higher power, by whatever name you choose to call it, if there's ever been a time to embrace that, it's now. The people that I'm working with that leave me spellbound and dumbfounded and honored just to be in their presence are people that have a connection with God. They're working in service to something greater than themselves. And I think that we've become so egoic here, particularly in the West, of self-service, of everything is about us. While it's very important on one hand to take care of yourself and to strive for your own individual freedoms and your health, and to put more focus on thyself instead of the collective and collectivism, but individual liberties. At the same time, we have to find a balance between what we're in service to. And are we just in service to our fetishes and addictions and material wants and desires? Or are we in service to something greater? And I believe as children, we knew what we came in here for. At least we knew the essence of it. If we weren't able to perhaps name it and pick the profession that we would choose, we knew that we came here for a divine purpose. And so I have become far more truly spiritual. I used to belong to spiritual communities of LA. And I will tell you straight out that the majority of them are delusional. They are, I had a very wise man say to me one day, be very careful about your New Age communities because it's the ego's favorite place to hide. And I know exactly what that man meant at this time. I know what he meant by that. It is a really easy thing for people to come in to learn the language, to say namaste, and to be apparently present by looking in someone's eyes for an uncomfortable period of time, and to use all the lingo and we are one and all that stuff. And at the same time, they're hypocritically abusing the power of sacred sex, of manipulating with their words. They're just hustling. Like there are race hustlers and there's spirituality hustlers. And a vast majority of the people that I once really thought had it together as spiritual leaders, after working with them for a number of years, I realized that that's a safe place for their ego to hide out, and they're about making money. And they've just found a niche, and they're going to run it all the way through, run that game all the way through. And so now I'm looking at spirituality in a whole different sense. It's really about humility. It's really about being in service. It's really about not living from fear, but really trusting in this thing we call faith for whatever name you choose for your own creator, whatever it is. But it's having this faith in some divine orchestrated plan that we call life, because that in itself reduces our propensity to struggle. Because when things occur to us, as the first time I ever sat with, I've spent a lot of time with different cultures and indigenous cultures. And the first time I sat with a Buddhist monk, he said one phrase that stayed with me forever. And that is, resistance is the cause of all suffering. And I thought, all suffering? Is that, I don't know, maybe. It's probably a dramatic statement, but let me look into this. And through the years, I started realizing every time I was feeling this discomfort of suffering somehow, that I would look at my language, I would look at the thoughts in my head, and I'd realize I'm actually saying to myself, this shouldn't have happened. They were too young to die. This isn't fair. This isn't whatever it is. That's all resistance language. And the quicker I can get to, it hurts. That's my reality. I hate to see this person pass. I feel it. I miss them already. And something greater is about to unfold. And they've sacrificed themselves in the perfect timing. You're never too young to die. When you die, you die. And so, what is that gift? Can I see it quicker? Does it have to be 10 years later that I reflect back and go, that was actually a really great gift that occurred in my life? Or can I see it as it's happening? Because that becomes mastery. I don't always succeed at that. I sometimes get stuck in my own stories of resistance. But the quicker I can get to that point of going, what is the gift in this moment? Because it's happened. And me sitting and cursing that it happened isn't going to do me any good. It's just going to create more tension and stress and suffering in my body. So what is the gift in this moment? And it's amazing when I ask myself that from a very pure intention, that immediately something occurs to me that has me accept my reality and utilize it in a way that actually moves me forward with greater abundance, greater energy, greater strength, greater love for humanity, as opposed to darkening my light. And that's a practice that is that can't happen without some level of awareness and acceptance that there is a greater power than these little bodies, hearts, and minds.
Yeah, if you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes, right? And if you can, I tell myself that we have a little family business and a little construction company. Hopefully one day I'll do this full time, but a lot of stress happens with just work and balancing being a dad and being a husband and all, all the things that, you're also going through and a lot of listeners have to go through. And so often when I'm like full of anxiety and stress, I'm just like, okay, let me just look at this differently. Let me look at it as like, this is a challenge, or this is, and like, you realize how much of how you feel about something is all based on perspective. Like if you change your perspective, the way you feel on something completely changes. So if I'm really tired from, my wife's in the restaurant business, she's a waitress. So she comes home late and we try to have, our little date nights when the kids go to bed, a little one-on-one time. So we'll watch something and we'll open a bottle of wine and we'll snack and we'll hang out. Even if she gets home real late, 11 o'clock or whatever, I'll stay up. And the next day I'm like super tired. I'm like, oh, that was such a bad idea. And I'm like, you know what? Like instead of me mentally complaining about not getting enough sleep, let me, see it as like, okay, it was nice to have that one-on-one time. Most relationships don't have that time. The kids become full priority and then you neglect a little bit of the relationship. And let me see this as a challenge. Can I still get through my workout in the morning? Can I still wake up in the morning and just, go kill it today? And just that little internal thought changes how I feel about everything. And all of a sudden, instead of complaining and being all negative, I have some positive energy and I'm ready to take on the day. So it's such something else you said on a interview that was really important too, because we have a lot of similarities, like you talking about being a Bernie Sanders fan. Maybe it's just the artist in us. Like I kind of agreed with a lot of those policies. I'm like, yeah, I want to help other people. We can all contribute with helping each other. Why is that bad? And then later you realize like, okay, in theory, it's not bad, but bad people are going to use it for control and power. And
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's all of this has been, I think awakening for a lot of people. How do you are you, in regards to like your kids? I know being a father and husband and all these things. I know you moved to Texas. Are you homeschooling? I mean, not to get too much in your personal life if you don't want to discuss it, but
I'm an open book. So yeah, we're homeschooling. We actually have a teacher here now, and she brings her two kids, and they're best friends with my two kids, and so it really works out wonderfully. They went to school last year, and it was a lovely experience, but they weren't learning at the pace that we preferred, and so we decided to create our own curriculum and map out what was important to us. And it goes beyond reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's learning conscious language, learning how to resolve conflict, learning how to grow food, learning how to self-defense, how to think as opposed to what to think. And so we sat down and mapped out all the things that we wish we would have been taught as children. And we said, why don't we teach our kids that? And we interviewed potential teachers for months until we found a couple that were aligned with us. And we work with them in tandem. So instead of just giving our children over to say, here's our children, do your best, we're engaged with them. We went to dinner with our teacher last night and her children, and I'm also engaged with her children in a way. Her husband passed away, and so I have a very tender spot. I was raised with a single mother whose husband passed away, and so I have a very tender spot for that. And so I'm also helping to educate her children, serving as that male figure in their life, to talk about very important things like, she has one of her boys is 5 years old, and I'm in love with both of them. They're wonderful children. But to have conversations with them that, I went out, they were playing last night in the backyard, and the 5-year-old was up a tree, and the mom was saying, get down. And I heard it over and over. I heard her saying, get down. And he said, not right now. I don't want to. And so I walked out and I said, hey, when your mother says get down, you get down. You always respect your mother and listen to your mother. And she goes, did you hear Mikki? And he was down in seconds. And it's like they need that. They there's a different energy sometimes that the frequency of father brings. And I'm not saying I'm his father, but that male energy, that masculine energy. And so I do look at myself as a father figure for all of the children. We have tons of children in our life right now. And I see other fathers as a father figure for my children. And we give them permission when they're doing sleepovers. We say, listen, feel free to discipline them. Feel free to give them rules. Feel free to, you have rules of your home. And, just short of laying your hands on our children, I welcome you to treat them as your own. And, that's how we used to raise children as a village. But now everyone's so afraid because, now when you say a mean word or you misgender a child or whatever, you get sued. And so we just don't play that game. We say, listen, we want the village to raise our children. And we want them to know, even if it's contrary to what our rule book for our home, we want them to know your rule book for your home. They don't eat on my kids don't eat on our couch here, but they get to eat on your couch. Great. We draw the line for them and let them know everyone has different rules. And so they allow it there. We don't allow it in our house. And there's some things we allow that they don't allow. And so you need to understand the boundaries and respect the boundaries of the people that are inviting you into their home and allowing you to sleep in their beds and eat their food and play with their children. There's a sense of respect to give those people. Don't take it for granted. You're not entitled to that. And if you don't treat it properly, trust me, you won't be invited back. And so they understand the consequences of their outcome. My little one's constantly, he's a little bit younger, he's 7, and they go to have a sleepover at my oldest son is 10 years old, and he finds himself sometimes trying to exert himself into a conversation or into a moment when they get to engage with each other he'll irritate them to try to get attention. And so we'll have a talk and we'll say, understand, you're welcome to do that if you choose to, but understand that the outcome is Johnny probably won't have you come back next time. He'll just want Azai to come. And so understand that that's the outcome of your actions. And so it's without having to say, don't do this, which is what a lot of parenting does, just don't do this. We say, you're welcome to do it, but understand I'm hearing the irritation from Johnny and from Azai. And if the parents are seeing this too, trust me, they're going to say at one time, I think it's sooner or later they're going to say, I think it's probably best that Azai comes over for sleepovers and not Zuri because, he causes a little friction. I said, so what, think about that. Okay, Dad. And then the next time they go, they come back, I say, how did that go? And Azai will say, Zuri was awesome. He didn't do that anymore. He's making the choice for himself because I'm able to tell him as somebody who's older than him, as an elder, that it's like giving someone directions. Like, I've been here before, I've been to this part of town before, and this person hasn't, so I can tell you what streets to turn on. And so if we look at it like that, I'm giving my son's direction. I'm saying, I've been here before, and I'll tell you what happened to me as a child, and it's going to happen to you. It's inevitable. People won't tolerate this in their house if you keep doing that. Then they don't know what the outcome is. That's why sometimes kids are surprised that they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Next thing they know, they just feel abandoned because now Johnny doesn't want me over. And then they're hurt. But now we've set it up with the awareness so that if that happens, we go, who created that? And my son will say, I did. Okay, good. So what are you going to do next time? I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to irritate them. Oh, that's a good choice. You just grew from that. And maybe even there's a second chance. Why don't you go back to Johnny's mom and dad and talk with them? And let's give you a moment. I'll say, hey, Zuri has something he wants to say to you. We'll get him on FaceTime or next time we see them. And then we'll help him with, like, what is it that you want to say to them? I want to say, I'm sorry for the way I behaved last time I was at your house. And I would hope that maybe you'll give me a second chance. I promise I'll never do that again. And my 7-year-old will do that. And of course, the parents will say, of course, Zuri, how about this weekend? And then they report back to us like, it was so much better. That was awesome. Whatever you did, keep doing that. But he got to course correct himself without feeling the shame, without just being punished, but to understand the outcome of his own actions.
That's so important. I do that with my kids. My son's 6. I have a daughter who's 5. And same thing, like I've never been a big fan of rules. So if I ever tell them to do something or not do something, we'll discuss it if they disagree with me. And I try to help them see the situation and understand the situation, like kind of like you did. And that way they have a better understanding, because sometimes we are naive to the fact that they just won't know why they're doing something or what the outcome might be, like you said, and we just assume they do. And I always try to put myself in their shoes, like, okay, when I was this young, did I really understand this? Did I really know that? And something I've said over and over on this show, when you become a parent, you look at your parents like they're all knowing, like adults are all knowing, they have it all figured out. And then you become an adult and you're like, oh shit, none of us have it figured out. We're all kind of just, faking it till we make it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like showing that side of to my kids. When I don't know something, I'm okay with saying, I don't know, let's let's find this out together. Let's ask questions. And that's where like homeschooling and unschooling, I did a show in 2019 called Unschooled by author Kiri McDonald. At the time, I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And then now I'm like, wow, that was really interesting, because unschooling has become really important. And another thing you said, it does take a tribe. It takes a tribe to raise a family. My parents, my dad's one of 12. My mom's one of 7. They came from huge families. The older siblings took care of the younger siblings. You had uncles and aunts all over the place. And they were from farmland in northern Portugal, and where I was born. And then I came here, and they came to America thinking it was going to be a better place and they're going to be happier and they're going to get all these material things. And it was kind of a trick, because back home in Portugal, like you were around more family, more friends, everybody helped out. Here they had nobody wants to take care of the elders when they get sick. No, which is the funny thing about 2020, because it's like all of a sudden we care about our elders, even though other countries look down on the way we treat our elders. Typically, like, grandma's becoming too much work, send her into an old home. It's like, wait, right. It boggles my mind. And then the other thing too is it's so true in regards to a male-female relationship. There's nothing wrong with saying that a marriage between a male or female, or a just relationship between a male and female works and seems to work really well similar to if you're running a business, similar ways to getting a partner that has strengths that you have, that balances out your weaknesses. So it's like, you know, if I'm starting a business and I'm good at talking, which is obvious, and maybe I'm you know, I'll do the marketing part, and if somebody else who maybe doesn't have as much social skills but are good with numbers, they'll worry about the books. It's like there's nothing wrong with saying that. And a relationship between a male and female, very similar. There's things that a male's going to bring to the table that maybe a female's going to struggle to do, and then vice versa, you know, and they complement each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. And now all of a sudden, being a woman who has one of the most important jobs on earth, being a mother, is like a bad thing, and it's looked down upon. How dare you put me in this box that I can I should be a mother, and what it's like, it just boggles my mind.
Yeah. There's one story that just came to mind regarding something that you pointed out in the beginning. And that is when my, I think it was the first kid, I think it was Azai, when he was about 3 years old. I walked into his room one day and he had like a butter knife and he was near a electrical socket. I went, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Just playing." And I said, "Hey, buddy, never stick anything in there. You will get shocked. You'll get electrocuted." And he went, "I'll get electrocuted?" And I was like, I walked out of the room. I'm like, I don't think that landed. He looked happy. And then I thought, wow, we had just watched I think it was The Incredibles or something. And, you know, one of the characters is electricity comes from his hands. And so I had to put myself in his position and thought, see, in my language, I understand the result of being electrocuted. But to his world, all he thought was, it's going to give me superpowers. So I went back in his room. I went, "Wait, come here. Let me show you what I mean, what that means actually." And I went to YouTube, and we did this a lot. I don't have to do it anymore, but we'd go to YouTube and I'd show him, I'd search, you know, people getting electrocuted. And there's some pretty serious videos, as you can imagine, of people doing that. And it's showing their burned hands and all that stuff. And I showed him. Now, some people might say, "Oh, he's too young to see that." No, that might save his life. Are you kidding me? I want him to see the realities of the physical world. And I showed it to him and he went, "I don't want that to happen." I said, "That's why you don't put things in electrical socket. That's what electrocution means."
I did it's so funny you're telling the story. That's exactly what happened with my kids. They were playing with a fork, which it's a little harder to get in the socket, maybe. But and I'm like, wait. I'm like, and I remember catching myself too. I'm like, this might be a bad idea. What if I traumatize them? But I'm like, I need to get this point across of what they're doing is dangerous.
Yeah.
So we go on YouTube, and I'm like hoping whatever I click doesn't traumatize them forever. And it was pretty mild, but they saw sparks and they saw somebody like, "Oh, that hurt," or whatever. And I'm like, see, I did the same thing. Like, they got near a raccoon once. I'm like, no, don't get near. I'm like, some animals will attack you. I'm like, you know, I'm like, careful, especially if it's a raccoon in the middle of the day. And because we saw a raccoon in a tree, and my kids like ran up to it to like try to see it. And I'm like, okay, now we need to get some raccoon videos. It's a useful tool, but taking those steps to explain things and see things, and those exercises are going to come in handy when they become adults like us, and they're trying to see things from all perspectives, and they attempt to not just like, you know, they attempt to see things from other people's point of views and stuff like that, because right now more than ever, that's what we need people. I mean, so many of us, like, there's no reason why the people on the right who, you know, are concerned about government overreach, and then the people on the left who historically have been more concerned about corporation corruption, why can't we meet in the middle? Because right now we're seeing both those things are major issues. You have big pharma that's force feeding you bad information, and obviously to profit, which is something that you figured the left could be motivated for and get them passionate about. And then you have the right, you know, government who is completely flexing their muscles and just, you know, just drunk on power. And where any opportunity they get, they're just more lockdowns, more restrictions, more laws, more mandates. and yet we have people fighting with one another, and it's like, no, we're all on the same team. We're on team people.
I'm with you 100%, and all of that's by design. The way that they slice and dice and segregate us into little smaller and smaller boxes is something we need to pay close attention to. I often use the example of the gay and lesbian movement. You know, having been raised with a gay brother, he was 13 years or so older than me. By the time I was old enough to pay attention, he was already immersed in his gay community, and I was able to. I look back at that now, and I realized that it was very easy for us to accept someone's gay. Okay, they love people of the same sex. I don't, you know, some people that are hyper religious will, you know, believe that that's a sin or whatever, and that's their prerogative. For me, as long as you're loving, I'm cool with that. And then it was, you know, gay and bisexual. Oh, that makes sense because some people go both ways. Okay, cool. And then it was gay and then lesbian. Okay, the women don't want to be called gay for some reason. Don't know why they want to be called lesbians. That puts them in another category other than just gay. So now we have gay, bisexual, and lesbian. Now what do we have? LGBTQ plus. I don't remember the other letters that come after that now. There's about 3 more additional letters. And that is people need to understand, especially people who support that movement, that's intentional, because now you have them all infighting. They're not part of one group anymore, one movement. Now they all have their own ideology. Same thing they did with feminism, right? When it was just women saying, listen, we deserve equal rights. We want to be able to vote. We want to be able to hold positions in office and in business. And we are equal as human beings, and that we want that recognized. Makes perfect sense to all of us. And then it was first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, and now they're all infighting. You know, the original feminists don't agree with the third and fourth wave feminists, and so that's the way they do it. And they keep slicing and dicing us, until there is it weakens each movement totally. And unification is what they fear the most, total unification. The moment that black and white people and brown people and straight and gay people come together, it's one thing that I'll tell you that I now, because I've, you know, been banned all over the world, I used to be incredibly picky about where I would speak and who are the other speakers, because I don't want to be on stage or follow someone with ideologies that I don't agree with. I can't be that picky anymore because there's a very narrow lane for me to be in. And so, you know, I'll end up speaking with people who have different ideologies. And sometimes I'll follow, at one point I followed a black pastor who got up and railed against homosexuality. I'm not here to promote it. I certainly don't want it taught to my children in schools. I want them to find themselves. I don't like these new ideologies that are erasing gender lines and all of that. I think that there's a very powerful structure within the masculine and feminine. And when we honor that, we actually end up in right relations. And there's a reason that the people promoting these new studies just came out and said that they're at the unhappiest level they've ever been. Well, of course you are, because that primal, traditional aspect of the reason that we were made with innies and outies that ultimately produce babies, there's a natural design in the way we were made, and it doesn't mean you can't expand beyond that in your own way. Do what you want, live your life, you be you. But I followed this black pastor, and he was, you know, I really enjoyed him off stage, but then when he got up, he railed against, you know, if you're a lesbian, you're a sinner. If you're gay, and I was like, oh my God, I have to follow this, you know? And so I got up and I said, no matter who you are, if you're vaccinated, you're loved. If you're unvaccinated, you're loved. If you're this, you're loved. Like, let's just, and for me, it really, it shows the ignorance and how out of touch people are on both sides. So like right now, the Republican Party, if they played their cards right, I'm just looking at it from a purely not a support side, but a strategic side. A lot of my work is strategic. We have to always think, what is the strategy here to get our messaging known? And right now, there's a massive mutiny happening on the left. My most hardcore, furthest left friends are now calling me, how's Texas? Because we're looking for a red state. I'm like, what? I never thought I'd hear that from you. They're all of them are looking for a state that's more sane, that has less lockdowns, less mandates. And so there's an amazing opportunity for the Republican Party right now. But what do? What are they working on right now? Overturning Roe versus Wade. And so like you really think about how out of touch are these politicians that they would pick now. If that's something they're for, well, then they should fight for that. They should plead their case and fight for that. But in the middle, when people are like orphaned, going, which way do I go? And where do I vote in the midterms? And where do I go? You're going to spring something like that on these people who have been programmed to think that Roe versus Wade is the most important law ever passed. And now you're going to what are you doing? And the left makes the same just idiocracy in the moves that they make. It's like, are you intentionally trying to lose people? Perhaps there's another game here that I'm not fully aware of yet, where they're just wanting chaos and wanting to keep everyone, at this place of, having no place, no home to go. But that would seem pretty counterproductive to a political party that derives its power from having the majority of support from the people. So what are they up to? I don't know. But when you look at this, all it points to me is how out of touch they are with humanity, of not actually realizing that if they played their cards right and actually did what they said they're going to do, instead of just, presenting these empty promises to the people and then coming out and doing the opposite, if they just stood on their campaign promises and fought for that, they could gain a lot of traction and what they ultimately want, which is power. But they clearly are playing a different game.
Yeah, and so you have a new documentary that you're working on.
Yeah.
And then you also have a book that came out not too long ago, PLANdemic, Fear is the Virus, Truth is the Cure, which I love that title. That's a great title. Would you let people know a little bit about what these projects are about? Sure. And where they can eventually find them? And
absolutely. So yeah, we're in the middle of 3 projects right now, but the one that's most important to speak about is PLANdemic 3. That is in full swing production right now, and it is about stopping the indoctrination of our children. So we'll go into vaccines a little bit, but it's not going to be the focus, because I'm fully aware that the agenda to vaccinate the world has little to do with actually vaccinating the world, and nothing to do with healthcare, but it's everything to do with creating an environment of compliance that can then be, they can achieve their goal of total control of a one world currency, a one world government, one world healthcare, all of that these people at the top of this pyramid can then have, they'll control the trade of other nations, and they're working with foreign adversaries to do this. So it's not just an American thing. The CCP is deeply involved, and a few other nations that are involved in this concerted effort to dethrone America as the greatest power, because America is the firewall between the elite, these elite forces, I hate calling them that, but whatever else, globalist forces, and the in-game agenda of total control. America is the firewall for that. And so you have to destroy, they've been trying for decades, but they finally reach a point where they realize, all right, well, let's go at this gradually. We're not going to beat America through war because they have the most powerful military. So what we need to do is beat them through ideologies, by infiltrating their universities and poisoning their minds with professors who have been indoctrinated, to have them focused on, needing safe spaces. When someone says something you disagree with, no more powerful discourse. That was one of the most powerful tools for us to grow and learn from, is having, healthy debates and learning from each other and challenging our own viewpoints. And you can't do that anymore in college campuses, because now that's considered hate speech. And so all these ideologies that are created to eventually weaken, as we said earlier, to chip away at the pillars of everything worth living and dying for, so that these young people, the next workforce, is in a place of hating their own country, perhaps hating their own skin color, because they've been convinced that even though they don't feel it and they've never seen a trace of it, that they're the oppressor. And then if they have more pigmentation in their skin, and even if they don't feel it or have any real evidence of it, that they are totally oppressed and every cop is out to kill them and America hates them. All of this absolute, just false narrative that is so destructive to the psyche of a developing mind and is going to be the dominant ideology of our next workforce. The people that are, it's already there. I mean, most of the people running big tech, which the technocracy literally controls the world, those people have already been conditioned to believe this. This is why they jump on every bandwagon and they don't ask really what's the true, what's the mission statement of Black Lives Matter? If they looked at that and they went, well, it's to disrupt the nuclear family. What is that? Before I, paint that across my corporate building or across my gymnasium, NBA basketball floor, I want to know, what do you mean by that? What do you mean disrupting the nuclear family, the American nuclear family? How do you plan to do that and why? They don't stop. They just go, well, if this wins me brownie points for, showing that I'm not a racist, so I'm going to put this here. It's all virtue signaling. They don't mean it. And when it really comes down to it, they're not supporting Black lives. And so these are the things that we need to get smarter about and not be lured into these fake movements that actually end up doing more damage to people of color. And you better believe that if the mainstream media is promoting it, it's not what they say it is. They're never going to promote something that actually has the ability to end the thing that we all want to end. They're never going to promote a cancer cure. They're never going to promote ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, stuff that will prevent us from needing these vaccines in this moment. They're never going to promote any kind of unified message that has people understand that up until the last 4 years, racism was really dying out. And if you look at we measure bizarre things, like there are ways you can go, there are different systems that you can go to online, and you can look at words and phrases. And so from as trivial as something I searched for a few years ago, the name Betty, because I thought, no one's named Betty anymore. That's interesting, because I met an old lady named Betty, and I thought nobody names their children Betty anymore, unless it's, they had a grandma or it's mother or whatever. And I looked, and sure enough, the name Betty is just declining. It's going away out of the lexicon. No one's naming their kids Betty anymore. But if you look at things like white supremacists, neo-Nazi, racism, you'll see that there's an exact correlation, and that suddenly these things are declining. People aren't talking about them. And then all of a sudden spike. And if you look, it correlates exactly with political campaigns. When Barack Obama came into office, very first president I ever voted for, you see a massive spike he brought. But you think, well, okay, first Black president, of course, he's going to be speaking about race relations, and it kind of makes sense. And then it starts dying out. Now it comes time for his second term. Boom, here they go again. And then every new candidate that he wanted to endorse, you see the spike. And so it was either utilizing these words and phrases to keep these things alive. They have no intention. Matter of fact, they will fight to their death to keep these things alive. What would they do without the subject of racism? So they don't want to solve any of this. You think they want to solve climate change? Really? I mean, show me evidence of where they've ever wanted to actually stop anything. If they wanted to stop climate change, they would stop calling it climate change, and they would call it pollution. We are polluting our planet in every ways, our air, our soil, our water, all of it. But the moment you call it pollution, we have the technology, the funding, and everything. We know how to clean our oceans. We have devices for that. We know what to do with our soil, with our food production, all of that. The moment you call it pollution, right away, all those sharp brains in the world go, I know how to fix that. But they want to call it climate change, because then it's like, well, what do I do? Well, what you do is you give me power, and I'll put the policies in place that will then limit how much you can drive, how many miles a month, what kind of cars you can drive. It will give me power to take control of all transportation and all food production and these farting cows and all the stuff that we've set up. It gives the politicians power to make policies under the guise of it's fighting climate change. No, it's reducing your liberties, and they're never coming back. 2001, some dummy went through a metal detector with a bomb in his shoe or some explosive device. 20 years later, we're still taking off our shoes. These liberties don't come back. We need to wake up to that.
Yeah, once you give them power, they never give it back. That's a real concern that people don't seem to understand. And you're right. As a foreigner coming to America, like and being very motivated when I first became politically involved, very motivated by like the anti-war movements and all that stuff. I looked at patriotic people as like, you're brainwashed. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, they're using this as a tool to get you to kill people that you know, you don't know, and all this stuff. And now, especially in 2020, I started realizing the importance of the American spirit and the American people and what this country was founded on. There was something unique about it. I mean, if maybe if done correctly and properly, maybe they did put the right pieces together to avoid something like, you know, the corruption that we're seeing today.
Yeah.
Obviously that the rules have been manipulated, but it seems like the founding fathers, coming from you know, most of them being people who were anti-monarchy, were trying to create a system where they could avoid something like that again. And that spirit, I think, is really important. Do you think that's one of the reasons why it seems like they're trying to destroy America from the inside out, like just everything we believe in, what we are, everything? And it almost seems like it's almost the most important piece to the puzzle, because we have a rebellion type of spirit that maybe doesn't exist so much in other countries.
Yeah, that spirit has really surrendered to complacency in so many ways, you know, and that's a real problem with the people. You know, we don't realize that we just decade after decade of being told that we're, you know, that we're the working class, which is another way of saying the worker bees or the slaves. And so that relationship between master and slave is something that has been alive since the cradle of civilization. And I like to say to people, you alluded to something earlier about how hard it is for people to consider that there's this big conspiracy going on. And as I said on a earlier podcast I did today, as I said, because this person was also, you know, trying to figure this out. He's like, I just can't get past, like, they're all in on this. Like, like Bill Gates is at a table plotting to do, like, that just doesn't. And I said, well, then let's bring it down to the micro. Do you understand, or do you agree with this concept that there are mega corporations like Walmart or like Amazon, like Apple, that are using and abusing their employees as slaves? Of course. So yeah, even so much so that, you know, in some territories where Apple products are being produced, they had to put nets outside the windows because people were leaping from the windows. You know, Amazon drivers have been known to have to urinate in bottles because they don't have enough break time. And so you accept that. Yes, I accept that. Okay, good. So what you're saying is there's a powerful people at the top of the pyramid. It's not just Jeff Bezos, but it's other people around him who are his appointed, you know, hierarchy of elite that run his day-to-day program. And you accept the fact that they see the people as their worker bees, their slaves, and they're doing everything they can to pay them just enough to be able to do their job, but they don't want them to get rich and have sovereignty. They don't want them to have enough money to actually sue them. Do you accept that that's real? Yes, I accept that of course that's real. We all know that. Then why is it so hard to accept that at the top level of this corporation that we call America, that the same wouldn't be occurring? It's not that big of a jump to understand that it's just the largest corporation in America is America. And there are CEOs at the top that are pulling the strings that see us all as worker bees that are no longer needed. Why? Because we're entering the stage of AI and automation. When you go into Target next time, see how many cashiers are actually working. Maybe 2. See how many self-help kiosks are at work. 8, 12. We're helping ourselves now. We're serving ourselves at these places. I went to Home Depot yesterday. 1 cashier open, and the rest were all self-help. And so what becomes of the worker bees when they're no longer needed? When robots actually work cheaper, they work more precisely, and they never complain about work conditions, breaks, or anything. They work 24/7. So they're outpacing human capability, which is why it's time for us to find other ways to support ourselves and our lives rather than working for these multinational monopolies that care very little, if nothing, about who you are and only what you produce for them. And so this is the stage we're at now. So how does that leave the people at the top of the pyramids? If you were Jeff Bezos and suddenly you went, well, we needed 600,000 employees last month, but now because of this integration of new automation, we now only need 200,000 employees. What do I do with 400,000? Well, you let them go. And what do you do with, billions of citizens when, letting them go is fine because Jeff Bezos just goes, they go somewhere else. But when those people that are out of work now become a nuisance, breathing your air, taking your resources because they still need to eat and they still need to survive, what do you do with them? Well, you find some way to reduce procreation. You scare the shit out of people so they stop having babies. And in some cases, you work to reduce the population in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
And when we get that that's what's in action, then the whole game becomes visible for us.
Do you think that's a way of looking at this in an optimistic point of view? Is that, on the cover of your book, it says 100% censored, 0% debunked. Stuff that you were getting censored for, I was getting censored for. So many people who were trying to spread truth and information was getting banned and flagged and constantly being censored on all the major platforms. Things that seem like nothing but conspiracy theories to the average person are now things that people are really entertaining, like the fact that maybe vaccines can harm people and can kill people. Maybe Bill Gates isn't a good person.
Or Anthony Fauci.
Or Anthony Fauci. Like, do you think that's it's a trend in the right direction to maybe stopping these things?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is the unintended consequence of the Great Reset. Is it's become the Great Awakening. They didn't, because they're so out of touch, like we spoke about earlier, they didn't stop to think that, well, when you lock the majority of citizens in their home for months at a time, and you think that they're just going to tune in to CNN and MSNBC, you're wrong. They're online becoming researchers, becoming citizen journalists. We have given birth to a generation of citizen journalists. I can no longer blow people's minds like I used to, because we have a research team. We were able to find facts that didn't exist anyplace before. I can't do that anymore. Now, when I try to tell somebody about a dinner party and like, did you guys hear about the XYZ? Everyone at the party goes, oh yeah, I saw that. I saw that on Instagram. I saw that on Telegram. I saw that on Signal. I shared that yesterday. And they're aware of all the stuff that's happening right now. So this is an awakening that's taking place. And this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. It's not always wonderful. It's not always rainbows and butterflies. It's sticky. It's like becoming aware of, a cheating mate. That's the worst part is surrendering to like, ooh, they're really doing that? Like that hurts. It's horrible, but it's so much better to know the truth. And so it's not always a good feeling, but the end result is going to be a much greater awakened and intelligent collective society that will, unless we allow the media to continue doing what they're doing, we may not end up here ever again. And if so, it'll be a long time from now. If we allow the CNNs of the world, if we keep paying them with our attention, we need to tune them out. MSNBC, CNN, even Fox, even though Fox has a couple of really great commentators that are really telling the truth about this COVID situation and the lockdowns and everything that's coming. It's one of the only networks that has actually drawn attention to that. They're still paid for by Big Pharma, and they have a lot of liars in their own network. And so the moment we tune them out and everyone stops watching them, they will go bankrupt and they will be gone. and a new one will come along and they'll win all of our attention and our love and our respect. And then gradually they'll start turning in the wrong direction. And it's up to us to pay attention to that and to realize, where are you headed? And hold them accountable to prevent them from taking us gradually back, because it's incremental steps that allow smart people to be fooled. You can't just suddenly reverse something on somebody and have them not go, wait, whoa, what is this? You have to gradually turn it around. Like when you're on a cruise liner and that ship is turning, you don't even know it's turning until the next thing you know, the sun's in a different position. And so it's that nuance awareness that we have to really pay attention to and listen to what they're saying. Always listen carefully. Why is it that they keep repeating this? Why is there so much focus about white supremacy? Like, this is weird. They're not even that prevalent. They're not marching in the streets. They're not, it's far more concerning what Antifa's doing. The fact that they're out out front of, the Rittenhouse courthouse, trying to intimidate jurors and threatening them and trying to dox them. And like that's a real problem. That's this disrupting the judicial process. That's a felony. And they're doing it as a collective. I don't see any white supremacy groups doing that. Do they exist? Yes. Do we need them? Absolutely not. Do we support them? Hell no. But why is there so much focus on that when you turn on MSNBC and CNN? Why is that in their lexicon every single day, every hour? Because they're building a narrative to stop the white people. It's just like what happened in Germany. Germany was one of the first places to have 1.4 million people take to the streets last year protesting the mandates. And what did they say? It was a Nazi-led rally. And I have footage of families dressed in white, laughing, waving flags, and just saying their family businesses are dying, and they're there to support their family and support their neighbors. And they're all colors and creeds you can imagine. But they wanted to paint that picture that it was a Nazi-led event. And what did it do? It was successful. So then anytime anyone went, to the corner to raise an American flag to say, we want our freedom, they went Trump supporter, white supremacist, look at these people. And a lot of them had nothing to do with Trump or any of that. They love their country and they're fighting for their country. But they've demonized that to such a degree now that, I got in trouble for saying patriot on stage one time. I don't care, I'll continue to say it. But patriot, what does that mean exactly? Has it been co-opted and used by some of these dark racist forces? Of course. But are we going to allow them to have our language? No, I'm not going to allow that. They can't take our language like that. They can use it if they want to, but it's the same way that both political parties take these wonderful, words of unity and inclusivity and all this stuff. They don't mean that. They don't want unity. They don't want inclusivity. They don't want that. They want division. They want war. They want chaos, because only then can they convince us that we need them to be the savior. And so, waking up to that, keeping a critical thinking cap on at all times, you start to see it and you won't be fooled by it anymore. And that's very critical, that we don't go back to sleep, that we don't think, 3 years from now, it's like, oh man, I remember that crazy time in 2021 when I can't believe the things we were doing and thinking and saying and the way we were treating each other. But then, media starts to steer us off course. And if we're not paying attention, next thing we know, 10 years from now, here we are again, doing the same crap.
And that was a documentary that, did you ever finish Narrative? Wasn't that the documentary you were?
That's the documentary I was working on when the pandemic broke out. And what I did was I folded a lot of the narrative into like the Operation Mockingbird and all that ended up in PLANdemic 2 was being created for the narrative. And so I went ahead and, pulled the curtain back on the fact checkers and who funds them and what they're about. Nothing to do with fact checking. And I think people are aware of that now, but I very rarely do I see anyone sharing Snopes anymore. We really pulled the curtain back on who those people are, and you see their bias in everything they support. And they've been, they just, whatever the mainstream narrative is what they're going to fight for. So they're not fact checkers. As I call them in PLANdemic 2, they're political spin machines. They spin the facts to support the chosen political narrative. And so yeah, so the movie, the narrative was just folded into PLANdemic 2.
Now, you're obviously, because they went to such a extent to, I mean, right when your documentary came out, there was already articles written that it was debunked and all this stuff. I mean, they went to such a extreme lengths to character assassinate you, to character assassinate Dr. Judy Mikovits. What are you going to do for your next documentary, and are there any steps that are going to be taken to try to prevent any extreme censorship like that? And
Oh
also
yeah.
with your book, are you concerned about censorship of your book, and have you seen any yet?
Oh yeah, they've tried. One of George Soros's companies came at us twice and trying to get everyone to boycott wherever the book is being sold. And I just say, keep going. You made my movies viral. Thank you so much. They're the best distribution strategy you can imagine, because the more they tell people not to see something, the more people flock to it. So again, they're so out of touch, they haven't recognized that yet. And yeah, we have some, you know, both films, both PLANdemic films went viral. The second one having over 200 million views, which is astronomical for a documentary. And the first one over 1 billion. And we didn't really have the support that we have now. We don't have the networks. We don't have all these doctors with massive networks that they've built for being courageous and going against the narrative. They're all now behind us. And so everyone's going to share the films to their massive networks. And we didn't have that before. I just had my Facebook page and a list of, I think, 30,000 on our email list. And now it's at 700. And so, you know, we're going to reach the people again. And there'll be nothing they can do to stop it, because it's decentralized, people-powered distribution. And that's the one thing that we pioneered for PLANdemic, that now people are starting to use it, where they say, you know, download the link and share it yourself. And that people had to let go of that old marketing lessons of, put them all in one spot so you can collect the numbers, you can collect their emails. And we said no barriers to entry. We won't turn on any commercials. We could have made hundreds of thousands of dollars had we turned on commercials. Don't ask for an email, don't ask for anything, just give it to the people. It's their file and they can share it. And we even suggested in some cases rename it, so it makes it harder for the bots to find it. Don't use the word PLANdemic. Call it Jim's movie, whatever, but get it out there. And so that's the one thing that they really don't like to see, because it's when it becomes people powered and not just a centralized distribution plan, it's very hard for them to track it. Experts at Google/YouTube said it was the hardest piece of media that they'd ever tracked. And it was simply because it was the power of the people. And so we're going to emulate that and then some. We have some other strategic plans that we're going to roll out that I won't mention, because we want to do it stealth.
Yeah, I work with this guy, Matt from Content Safe, and he's a big fan of all of ours and content creators, and he's a tech guy. And what he does, he syncs my I upload my video to one channel, and then he syncs it to all my channels, so I don't have to go through the process of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he also created my website, so that way it's, if I ever get banned, I got banned off YouTube for many interviews I did, but which was just a matter of time. Even though I still think there is it's still a tool that should be used to some extent. I created a new channel, put clips on there, because I think, unfortunately, a lot of people still go on YouTube to look for information, they're just naive to the fact that they're just force feeding you the mainstream narrative. So to reach those normies, I think are still important when you can. But yeah, I mean, without a doubt, the extent that they went through to censor you, and I mean, how much did your life change after that, in regards to just your online presence? I mean, did you just want to disconnect from all social media and in the world for a while, and just like, hey, I'm done with this? Or, I mean, it seems like it almost motivated you more. I mean, well, London Real did it, and a lot of these other guys that weren't really in this world that much, who stepped up to help out, I thought was really awesome. I mean, you see Joe Rogan running around a lot, which was nice to see. We got to get you trending to get on there. I think that would be a absolutely amazing interview.
I hear that every day. Yeah, if you're listening, Joe.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll see. We do have some mutual friends. Eddie Bravo has been on the show, and Sam Tripoli hosts the other show with me, the Union of the Unwanted and stuff. So that would definitely be a amazing interview. I mean, that also must give you some hope, right? When you see people like him who have such a huge platform finally seeing the light and openly talking about these things.
It does, and more are doing it. I have friends that have some major podcasts who have apologized to me earlier this year because they said, I'd love to have you on, bro, but I just can't. I can't cross that line. And now they're all crossing the line. They're leaping way past it. And they're like, okay, time's up. It's over at this point. You know, and it's become a little more safe for them to do that.
But it took your courage. It took you. That's why I tell these people on this show all the time. I tell listeners, I tell other people, it is so important to support people like yourself, James Corbett, you know, Del Bigtree, Ryan from Last American Vagabond, Ben Swan, all these people. And actually, one thing that most of them have in common, besides you and I, they're all pretty religious, which goes back to what we were saying. I think that is a motivation to some of these people. And some of the doctors have been outspoken. I mean, I think besides Dr. Robert Malone, a lot of the other doctors have been very outspoken, like Dr. Scott Jensen, Dr. Peter McCullough. You know, you start seeing this trend, like they're all spiritual or religious. And I think that is a motivator because they can kind of see the writing on the wall that this is a spiritual battle. But, you know, to support all, you know, all your guys and all your work, because when shit hit the fan, you know, for lack of a better term, and things were the darkest and scariest, you guys had the courage to be outspoken and say what other people were thinking but were too afraid to say. And we need to, because when something like that happens again, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, we need people like you who are going to do the same thing again, and that's so necessary.
Yeah, on that note, a couple of weeks ago, I launched in San Antonio, Texas, the Courage 19 Awards, and it was a big award show for about 3,000 people and we honored just about everybody. Of course, there were names that we forgot, but we honored everyone who spoke out early and spoke out in a big way. We wanted to show the people that, because the media has done such a great job of demonizing these people, that it's made a lot of people scared that, like, oh, if I speak out, I'm going to lose my job. My hospital won't, you know, allow me to do what I do anymore. And so we wanted to show people that the other side of it is acknowledgement. No one did what they did in this term, in terms of COVID, to win an award. They did it out of service, but it's important to show people that it's time to acknowledge them now. And because they really did, they stepped up early on, and history will remember them. And that's the important thing for people to realize is it's uncomfortable in the beginning, absolutely. But everyone I know who stepped out in a big way, there's a phenomenon that we all get together and we talk about. I spoke in Nashville about a month ago, and I was, you know, at a table with everyone that you just named and then some. And you know, everyone was talking about what a miracle it is that their lives have been just so blessed. They went through a dark period, a tough period of realizing, wow, a lot of my friends I thought were my friends really weren't, and how harsh the world is, and how hypnotized so many people are. It takes a bit to grasp all of that and to embrace it. And then once you just forget about it and realize that's not what's important, what's important is being truthful and sharing the truth. And I'm in service to this organism that's called humanity. And then something steps in and we're taken care of and we're protected, and life just gets better. We're surrounded by people that we know are our friends. They have our backs. They're the people we want to be in the foxhole with. And being in your purpose. I thought filmmaking was my purpose. And now I realize, no, that's just my canvas. It's just the tool. You know, my purpose is what's taken place since PLANdemic. It's having these conversations. It's helping people to wake up. And nothing drives me more than the ability and the honor to have a voice that some people listen to. You know, so I take a great deal of responsibility in every word that I choose, because I know people are listening. And what is the message that I want to put out there? Yeah, we can draw attention to the dark realities that we're all facing right now, but also let's balance that out with something that's beyond hope. What I mean by that is people talk about, let's be hopeful now. And I said, no, I'm not interested in being hopeful. Hope means, that there's a possibility that things are going to work out well. And we have to go beyond hope. We have to go into a place of knowing, because we manifest our realities. If I took anything from the spiritual New Age movement, it is that, because it's a real principle, a real sacred principle. What we dwell upon becomes our reality eventually. And so, I know how this is going to end. I know this is the great purge, when we're getting everything toxic out of our system so we can be well again. I know that. And will it get darker before it gets lighter? Absolutely, and it needs to. And so welcome that and embrace that and prepare for that. And just know that the other side of it is a more awakened, a more grounded in reality, a more intelligent, and a more aware humanity. And that's, what kind of price can we put on that?
Absolutely. That's I'm since the beginning of my show, I've been doing a lot of the same things that you were talking about in regards to saying put the conversation anywhere and anywhere, uploaded. It's open source. I adopted that from James Corbett. I love that idea of the conversations were more important than me getting the clicks or getting the attention. So it's like, put it anywhere, just anywhere. I just want people to be exposed to conversations, which isn't a great business model, but we're not motivated by that. We're motivated by the greater purposes and really trying to leave the world a little better than we received it, especially after becoming parents and whatnot. I think that motivation only becomes greater. But I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're a busy filmmaker, father, husband, all the above and much more. Let people know when they can look for the film, when you think roughly. I know obviously that changed.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months, PLANdemic 3 will be released, and it's a bombshell. It's coming out. It's far beyond what I thought it would be. And the way to keep in touch with all of that is PLANdemicseries.com. Everything is on there. Sign up for our newsletter. That's where we communicate with all of our community first. My link to my book is on there. And also, we just did a deal with Dr. Zelenko with his Z-Stack product, because everyone needs to boost their natural immunity now. Start now, because we're heading towards a dark winter. We have a lot of people around us with compromised immune systems. It's already showing up in record numbers, the amount of viruses that are being spread around, and it is a pandemic of the vaccinated at this point. They've reduced their natural immunity, and so that means when we're engaging with people on the outside, there's going to be more viruses spread around. And so we have a link on there. There's a part of that whole Z-Stack thing. Reason we got involved was it's a free formula that you can buy over the counter on your own. And so Dr. Zelenko has been giving that away for the last couple of years. And it's all over the counter stuff, and you can get it on your own, or you can buy the prepackaged version of it, which is called Z-Stack, and that's available through our website. And it's very potent. I'm on it today because I woke up today with a little bit of a sore throat, and I'm already feeling much better. And so that's on there. And then, as I said, sign up for the newsletter, because we do a lot of communication every week or every other week at least, keeping people abreast of what's going on and our release dates. And our Afghanistan movie, which should release tomorrow or by Friday, will be first announced through that newsletter as well.
Awesome. And I know your book is available on Amazon, but you recommend them obviously going to the website first, PLANdemicseries.com, and
yeah, go to the website, because it offers 3 other links other than Amazon if people don't want to buy from Amazon. Amazon is just a necessary evil that we have to deal with right now until we build our own platforms. If we want to get the messages out to the world, it's the biggest bullhorn. And so I had to succumb to that. And it was a difficult choice for me, believe me, particularly after PLANdemic 2, part of it was exposing companies like Amazon. So we have 3 other links on there as well, to more localized bookstores, and including Barnes and Nobles, that you can find them all right there, direct links to the website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mikki. I really, really appreciate your time and your insight on everything. I can't thank you enough for putting out PLANdemic. I used to tell Jason Burmis that he was a part of one of the most important documentaries ever, Loose Change, for awakening people. But I think your documentary was truly one of the most important documentaries ever, and exposing one of the greatest hoaxes, for lack of a better term, in world history. and many people like myself who had so many hunches and kind of started to connect the dots. It really helped a lot for even myself, who could kind of see what was going on, but you always had those little seeds of doubt of like, well, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm living my life normal and I do have a loved one get hurt by a virus, or my kids or whatever? And you really helped connect those dots for us, and I can't thank you enough for giving us a little bit of sanity when the world was going insane. So I can't thank you enough, and keep up the great work. Hopefully we stay in touch, and hopefully I get you on the You Unwanted one of these times.
I would be honored to. Thank you for your support, and it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Mikki. Take care.
All right, bud. Take care of yourself.